Hi, friends. Thank you so much for tuning in to another session of the Passionpreneur series. I'm so excited to be here with you again today for another amazing interview. Oh my goodness. I cannot wait for you to meet the speaker today. Melanie Deziel is hands down amazing. I haven't actually had the opportunity to meet her in person. We've just chatted via Zoom. But I mean, can I just go through a list of your credentials? Like, oh my God,
Sure.
worked for the New York Times, served as an expert in residence for Gary Vaynerchuck's Brave Ventures. Now, I'm not even sure what that is, but just the fact that it was Gary Vaynerchuk and you survived it, oh my God. You've won numerous awards in all different categories. You're married and you have the cutest baby girl. I did
That's
some
true.
Instagram stalking on her and she's adorable. Those eyes, oh my gosh. And you're doing all this running a business on decaf coffee.
It's true. It's true.
No, that I don't understand.
Well, okay, so I've always been a big fan of coffee. Like, I'm a coffee person. I drink so much coffee. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to switch to decaf so that I wasn't having too much caffeine. And then I realized, okay, if I'm surviving on decaf, maybe I shouldn't mess with it, right? Because I don't want to go back to drinking 5 cups of coffee a day again. So I've mostly stuck with decaf since then. And I just have, occasionally I'll have a caffeinated coffee, but when I do now, it does so much more for
I love that.
me.
People who know me on this series will know that I am a coffee fanatic. I mean, I do own every piece of coffee equipment there is. Like, I could have my own coffee shop, and I'm fully aware of that.
So you can understand my pain. So I'm here in the quarantine and my coffee maker broke 2 days ago.
Oh no.
It's difficult times over here. I
Oh,
know it's such a first world problem and it's decaf anyway, but it's like that one thing, that one ritual, it's gone. So we're waiting for a new one to come in.
oh my goodness. If we were closer, I would totally just send something over to you.
We'll get something. It's going to be all right.
Oh, goodness. Okay, well, with all that in mind, and the fact that, coffee's pretty crucial, but you're making do right now, how are things with your business right now?
So it's a really weird time to be a speaker because most of what I do is speaking at conferences, doing in-person trainings for different companies, and we're not really doing in-person anything at this particular time. And most of the big events that I would normally speak at and do workshops have either been postponed or canceled or sort of are on hold indefinitely. So it's definitely a very weird time to be in my particular business of doing training and speaking. Luckily, we're pivoting as much as we can. So I have been able to transfer some of those into more digital presentations, kind of like this one, right? Digital, webinars and live calls and things like that. And we're also looking at other opportunities too. So I launched a book in February. So that's new and exciting. So that has, some new opportunities coming out of that. So we're looking for all different ways to kind of keep things going in the meantime while we all settle in and wait till it's safe for us all to be doing in-person events again.
I love that. So now a lot of you are probably wondering, well, what exactly do you do? We did all of that. We're going to circle back. So Melanie, I would love for you to now just give us some background into who you are, your expertise, your business story fuel. Why should we listen to you?
Well, hopefully it's worth it. We'll see, right? But yeah, so my background is actually as a journalist. So I studied journalism. I always wanted to be doing really impactful storytelling. I've been sort of a lover of stories and storytelling ever since I was young. And, when I got out of school for journalism, I got my undergrad degree in investigative reporting and my master's in arts and cultural criticism. And then I discovered I couldn't find jobs doing either of those things in the economy at the time. And so I wound up ending up on the marketing side of things. So I was basically teaching the best practices of journalism to marketers and people with personal brands and anyone who needed to use sort of those storytelling best practices, but for a business purpose or some broader strategy. So I worked at the Huffington Post. I helped build their Huff Post Partner Studio, their brand storytelling team. I was the first editor of brand content at the New York Times, and I helped build out T Brand Studio, which does all of their branded and sponsored storytelling. And then I worked at Time Incorporated as the director of creative strategy. Same thing there for the US magazines, just working on how do we tell stories on behalf of brands in a way that's really interesting for our audience. So around that time when I was at Time Inc., I realized that the value I was bringing to these companies, to HuffPost, to the New York Times, and then to Time Inc., was setting up these teams and teaching people how to do this stuff, how to do this storytelling. And I realized that I was going to have to keep job hopping and teaching new people at new companies over and over unless I set up shop on my own. And so it was with my husband's help. You know, he's very entrepreneurial. He kind of saw the opportunity and encouraged me to chase it. And, you know, we set up Story Fuel, and it's a company that allows me to reach many more people than I could in my full-time job. So now my full-time job is teaching other people. So I do that through masterminds, through, you know, all the things we talked about before, the book, the, you know, doing workshops. You know, Google has brought me in to do trainings for their employees. You know, financial firms, insurance companies, all kinds of companies bring me in to teach their employees how they can do storytelling more like journalists do, on sort of the marketing, PR, communication side of things. And then, you know, I do consulting with some brands directly as well. So it's just basically I get to do what I love every single day and teach people how to love storytelling as much as I do, and coming up with content ideas and getting to live in that creative space. And so it's a lot of fun for me. I'm really lucky to get to call this my work.
I love that. So, okay, diving into storytelling, because I've had a couple of other storytellers, experts on
Yeah.
here as well, but you guys are all drastically different. Your approach is completely different. So I would love for you to just to tell the audience, what type of business or personal brand would hire you or use your technique?
Yeah. So the wonderful thing about the techniques that I teach is that it doesn't really matter what you sell or what your business objective is. This kind of work that we do can be used by tech companies like Google. I've worked with fashion brands. I've worked with, you know, jewelry brands. I've worked with security startups. You know, it's just, I've worked with all different industries. And the good news is that everyone has stories to tell. So it doesn't really matter what industry you work in, how many employees you have, how many different kinds of resources are maybe at your disposal. If you know how to find the most compelling stories hidden within your mission, your values, your employees, it's going to be very easy for you to turn those around and share them with your audience. And that's really what we focus on is, you know, we're almost like explorers or miners or, prospectors in the early days of moving west, where we're just sort of panning for gold and trying to figure out what's hidden inside the things that we do so well and our expertise and our values, and how do we turn that around into something that our audience would love to hear more about.
So what would be an example of a story that, say, oh goodness, let me find an example. A clothing boutique, an online clothing boutique.
An online clothing boutique. So the first thing I would want to spend some time and sort of learn more about their practices and their products. But the one thing I would ask is sort of who selects the clothes or the items and where do they come from? Because there's probably a story there. Who is the sort of creative mind? Maybe you're making some of the clothing yourself, right? If it's your own, where did you study fashion? How did you come to create this? What's your founder origin story? You could also give a lot of advice on how to style the particular products that you sell. So one of the things that may be a challenge for some people is, okay, I love that dress, but what would I wear it with? Or where could I, what sort of occasions would it be good for? How do I match it to my shoes? So giving styling advice for different products or types of products would be helpful as well. So there's so many stories you could tell as it pertains to your products. It just would depend on the specific products and your specific audience too, because a clothing boutique for young women versus a clothing boutique that has men's and women's clothes, a clothing boutique for children or pregnant women. There's all different categories and ways you might be able to create helpful content that makes them more informed and better customers for you.
So this goes way beyond just testimonials.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So testimonials are great. You should absolutely be telling customer stories, but I think there's a lot of value in sharing other parts of what we do as well. The analogy I like to use is so often, if I tell you the person you last tried to have a conversation with that only talked about themselves. You don't have to name names, but like someone came to your mind, right? You're thinking of
Yeah.
someone, everyone does, right? And nobody likes to talk to that person because it's not about you, right? It's all about them. And you feel like, what value am I adding here? Is this really a conversation? Do they really care about me at all? And sometimes when it comes to our marketing, we're doing the exact same thing. We're looking at our customers and we're saying, buy my product, check out my sale, come to my website, give me your email. And we're never listening. We're never having that conversation, right? And we want to do business with companies that we feel valued by. We don't want to feel like just a number, even if we are. And so one of the ways we can really provide a lot of value to our customers is to see what are the ways we can listen to them. We can answer their questions. We can provide them with some value. And sometimes that means we don't want to just talk about our product or just about how great we are. We want to look to some of the related topics that are around that. So again, the styling advice, like for a boutique, is a really great example of, okay, maybe it's not exactly about our product, but it's product adjacent. It's still valuable to us as a business, but it's also valuable to our customers in a way that's not making a direct call to action. And I think that's where we want to spend some more of our content time. Most of us are really good at telling product stories, but not so good at telling some of those stories around the edges.
I love that. I love that. So we'll get into your book in a moment, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious, when you work with businesses, entrepreneurs, what are some of the steps that you might take them through to get to, one, knowing their origin story and even begin to tell a story? Are there
Yeah.
steps or guidelines you follow?
So you mentioned that there are some other speakers in this space who talk about storytelling in sort of a broader sense. So one of the recommendations I always make is, if you're looking to figure out, you really need to know who you are for me to be able to help you. I think if you are not sure who you are and what you stand for, then I'm going to have a hard time helping you find stories that are hidden within that, right? So the first step is, you want to make sure you have a clear brand identity for yourself or for your business, whatever it is that we're telling stories about. It's not necessarily my strong suit to help you come up with a logo or a tagline. Like, that is kind of a foundation we want you to have already. And so if you're looking for a sort of who are we approach to storytelling, then something like Donald Miller's Story Brand is a really good place to start. He has a book called Story Brand, and some online resources as well that would be very helpful for you figuring out who you are. So as long as we have that first step, we can move on and work together. What we're going to want to talk about there is, okay, who is your audience? That's really important because our content is different depending on who it's for. So we want to try to figure out, we'll work together, who is the audience that we're creating this content for? And then we want to identify, what are all the tools we have at our disposal to share content with our audience? So for most people, that would include like a website, maybe you have a blog, a YouTube page, Twitter, you kind of list off your social platforms. Maybe an email list as well. Maybe you do some sort of direct mail. Maybe you have an in-person, storefront that has signage of some kind. So we just sort of list out all of our platforms that we have, digital and otherwise, to tell our story, to share content. Once we understand, we know who we are, we know who we're talking to, and we know all the ways we can talk to them, it becomes very easy to kind of fill in the blank and say, well, if we want to create content for people like this, sent via email, that helps demonstrate this particular part of who we are and what we do, then you have more of a prompt to get started and figure out, what is that content that we should be creating? What can we do that's going to appeal to them most? And I think that's really the key, is most of us don't have a system, or just, we all have that, like, what am I going to post today kind of,
Right.
feeling. And it's often because we haven't thought through, okay, who are we posting for and why? And once we have sort of a clear list of prompts or options to fill in those blanks, it becomes much easier to say, okay, rather than what can I post today, is what can I share for, expecting moms to help them feel more confident in their breastfeeding journey, for example, or what can I share for, aspiring athletes to help encourage them to, eat healthy, perhaps using our products, maybe not, right? So once you know who and where you're posting and why, it becomes a lot easier to come up with something that fulfills your strategic mission.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I'm writing down so many notes here. So in my business, I'm a social media manager, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
consultant. And so I work with a lot of my clients on planning out their social media. Like, what are you doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and
Right.
the weekends?
Yep.
So with storytelling, is this something that every day they're posting? Or is it something where it's on a schedule? So say if Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is all about the business, then maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, that's when we're telling that story. We're giving people behind the scenes. If we're a clothing shop, you know, where we're sourcing our fabric, who are our sewers and things like that, like where the
Yeah.
inspiration's coming from. And then the other days, are we telling a not so much a different story, but just posting something different? Does that make sense?
So here's, yeah, absolutely. One of the things I want to address first is I think we do often have this idea that sort of like our business posts about our content are different from like telling our story. And what I want to help people understand is that actually all of this is telling our story. What we want to do is do it consciously, right? So like we just said, that person, you know, who only talks about themselves, that's their story, right? We know what they're all about and we're not interested, right? So your story is getting told. You just want to do it with intention. And so I would say you don't want to sort of pick and say that we only tell stories on Tuesdays or we only tell stories on Thursdays or something like that. Everything you're doing is storytelling. Every email you send, every post on social, every piece of copy on your website is telling the story of who you are. It is content you're creating for your audience, and it conveys something about you and what you value. So what you want to do is just do it consciously. So when you're posting that photo and you have the option between, okay, I'm going to post a product photo on a white background that says $14.99 now on the website. Is this the kind of content we think our audience? Does this show what value? Because it sounds like what we value is making this sale. Really, we value helping our customer make a transition. So why don't we turn the picture into instead a picture of someone using it? And then we turn the caption into instead saying, you know, so many people struggle with this particular thing. If you have this product, it can really help shorten the time it takes you to do XYZ. Now, the piece of content we're creating, it's still a photo and it's still a caption, but it aligns with the story that we want to tell, with who we are and with what we value and our customers value. So you could find ways to weave that storytelling into everything that you do, you know, every email, every post. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to really be strategic rather than just posting for the sake of posting or creating content for the sake of content.
Oh, that was good. That was really good. Okay, so what if the business owner is just starting out and maybe they only have, say, Instagram and Facebook? You know, how is that enough to get their message out there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and one of the examples I like to give here is, you know, we can all think of, when I say to think of a YouTuber, you can probably think of someone, right?
Yeah.
Have you, I mean, most of us can think of one person on YouTube, right? Well, no one's giving them crap for not being super active on Twitter or Twitch or Facebook, right? I mean, it's nice for them to have a distributed audience, but it's okay for you to be really dominant in one particular platform or space and to really focus most of your attention there. The thing that's actually way worse, I think, and you work with clients in this space all the time, I think it's actually worse to be mediocre in many places than to sort of dedicate your attention to a few platforms early on. So don't sell yourself short. Don't think you're sort of phoning it in or not doing enough. You know, we're only human. So focus that attention where you can. I think if you're going to be on Instagram and Facebook, the one thing you need to think about is these are both platforms that thrive on visuals. And that can be challenging sometimes if you're lacking in resources. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you really have to think strategically about where are you going to be getting visuals or making visuals on a regular basis. Because a lot of times I've seen companies early on Instagram, they say, well, we have an image of every single product. We're just going to post a product photo every single day with a plain white background and, you know, link in bio if you want to buy this shoe or this shoe or this shoe, right? And people don't follow someone on Instagram. They don't follow an account to see product photos. They'll go to your website if they want to see product photos of everything you sell, right? They're there for something else. So you want to think about how you can find content that's going to fit into that environment. And that's different for every company. But, you know, I gave the example of a shoe company before. So if you are a shoe boutique and you're trying to appeal to people on Instagram, you probably can think about curating other people's photos of them wearing your shoes. If that, you know, user generated content is going to feel more organic because it is someone else's content that fits that platform. It's a good way for you to sort of secondhand signal that your products are loved by customers enough to post and share them publicly, which is a good sort of third-party validation of what it is that you do. And it also gives your feed some variety without you having to go and schedule, you know, hire models and do photo shoots every single week, which might be outside of your resources. So if you're focused on Instagram, you're focused on Facebook, again, those are just platforms that, you know, they value high quality imagery. Facebook values video especially, and the same can be said for Instagram. So if you are focusing your attention there, you just want to make sure you're spending particular time thinking about the visual way you're going to be able to tell your stories. If you were, say, like a cloud computing consultant, I don't know, you might struggle with visuals for Facebook and Instagram on a daily basis. I would, if that, right? So it just comes down to thinking about how you know, the formats in which you can tell your story and whether it has visual elements to it.
And again, back to who is your customer, your audience, where do
Right.
they live?
Right.
So,
like, what, you know, my mom has an Instagram, but she doesn't use her Instagram. So if you were trying to appeal, you know, to that type of audience, then maybe you want to be on Facebook more so, because that's where your audience is. You know, same thing. My grandfather spends all of his time on Facebook. So if you're appealing to that audience, you might want to be there. But my niece, she's not putting set foot. You know, she's all over TikTok. So if you want to appeal to a younger audience, you need to be there. It's just, that's why that question of who are you trying to speak to matters so much, because it's going to change the way you bring your story to life.
that's so true. And just bringing up TikTok, I mean, you've got 60 seconds to get your story across.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and
That's
I think TikTok is a really good example, I think, of when it comes to trying to find stories that are not so product centric, but can still be very compelling. You know, TikTok is an environment that seems to thrive on a few things. And I'm a student of it, but probably not to the degree that you may be working with your clients. But, you know, it thrives on music, dancing. There's a lot of lip syncing. There's a lot of comedy, right? There's like a rising group of comedians there. And there's a lot of sort of like jokes, tricks, pranks, memes in the general like amorphous humor category. It's probably not the best place to be doing like in-depth reviews and unboxing of things the way you would on YouTube, because you don't have the time to get into great depth there. You know, it's probably, you don't see quite as many of like the makeup tutorials, because again, it usually takes longer than 60 seconds to show that full, like, you know, start to finish look. And that thrives more so on Instagram and on YouTube, because you have more time there, or you can swipe through on Instagram through, you know, the steps of the process. So again, just thinking about where is your audience, but also again, what's the best way to bring our story to life? And if it's not through 60-second vertical video, then maybe that's not a place where you need to spend a lot of your time and effort.
so true. So true. So 2 more things I want to definitely touch on.
Yeah.
I love that your background is in journalism. I love writing. I've been writing all of my life as well. And for a moment in time, I wanted to be a journalist.
Yeah.
But I love that that's your background. So, and I haven't had a chance to really talk much to people about things like Quora or Medium, Reddit, even Huffington Post. I believe they have an aspect of their site where you can be a contributing writer. So that, and also Evergreen content. If you touch on those 2 things, and just, you know, from a business perspective, what type of business is good for, say, a Medium or Quora, as opposed to, like we were saying, Instagram and Facebook?
Right. So if you're thinking, so there are 2 questions in there. It's like which platforms would be right, and then also sort of where you should write, or.
So touching like what type of content would you be writing for Medium, Quora, that sort of thing, and then as far as keeping it evergreen.
Evergreen. Okay, that was the second question. All right. So in terms of picking the right platform, I mean, I think Quora is a really great place. You know, for anyone who's not familiar, it's more of a Q&A style site. People have questions and people write very long answers. It's a wonderful place for you to demonstrate your expertise. So if you are working in a business where you are selling services, coaching, consulting, training, you know, someone like me, you know, could spend a lot of time on Quora demonstrating my ability by helping people. And the way that works is, if I'm someone who has the most answered, you know, I've answered the most questions, I've got the most upvoted, you know, top liked responses to questions in my area of expertise. Again, that's that third party validation that I create content that helps people on this particular topic. I'm an expert that can be trusted on this wide variety of topics. So again, if you're in an expertise or thought leadership type role where you're selling your expertise, your knowledge, then Quora is a great place for you to demonstrate that. You can often do the same thing in a Reddit. You know, if you're in relevant subcategories, subreddits on Reddit, the one caution there is Reddit is really, really hesitant on self-promotion. If they can sense that you're promoting yourself, like they turn on you real quick. So I wouldn't dive in there unless you're ready for sort of like advanced helping, where you're not going to be sharing your own links or promoting yourself. It really is a much lighter brand touch there, to not upset people and not seem like slimy self-promotion. They're not as tolerant on Reddit, I find, in terms of self-promotion. If you're looking for something like Medium, I mean, a lot of people treat Medium the way they would treat a blog that lives on your site or anywhere else. So I think what's great there is anything where you can add value to your customers. Medium, it's not going to do much by way of helping people find your content. It's a great place for you to house your content and then distribute those links elsewhere. So again, if you're using, if you're really, really big on Instagram, for example, and that's where you've historically dedicated most of your time, probably don't think Medium would be a great next step, because you're going to have trouble sharing those links with your primary audience on Instagram, because the only way to find that content on Medium would be via clicking a link. That being said, if you have a really active email list and you know that they're well trained to sort of click on links and come visit content, then starting a Medium and sending them there would probably work pretty well. So Medium can work as a free and easy place for you to give a home to some of your written content. So that's always a good place. If someone wants to like start a blog and build a following that way, but doesn't want to get mixed up in building a website, then that's sometimes what I recommend is start off on Medium. And the second part of your question was about evergreen content. So if you're not familiar, the concept of evergreen content, like an evergreen tree, is that we create content that is as valuable today as it is next week or next month or next year. And for those of you who are really tight on resources, you don't have a whole team or, hours a day to dedicate to creating content, then evergreen is very important for you, because you need your content to work overtime. You don't have the liberty of creating something today and having it cease to be relevant in 24 hours. We don't have time for that. So evergreen content, stuff that's going to continue to be useful for a long time, is super valuable. Some of the things you can create that are evergreen, my favorite category is instructional content or process-based content, where you're trying to educate your audience on something. So tutorials, recipes, how-to type content, steps in a process. That kind of stuff is valuable long-term, assuming that the fine details of, a process doesn't change. If you were to set up, for example, Brandy, like how to set up your Facebook ad campaign, you'd probably have to update that anytime Facebook changed their interface, right? You'd have to put new screenshots and start all over. But if it was about how to build a content calendar, something like that could probably live long-term, because the strategies and the tactics you recommend would be consistent. So think about, for your audience, this could be, it doesn't matter what business you have. If you're, a hairdresser, you can talk about how to do a deep clean on your hair or how to do a scalp massage. That's going to be relevant from here on out. If you are a mechanic, you can talk about how to change your oil at home, or how to care for a leather interior step by step. That kind of content is going to be relevant for me today, for someone else next week, for someone else 2 years from now. So look for those opportunities to teach your audience something, and that kind of educational content tends to have really long shelf life for your audience.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right, so I want to make sure we have enough time to go over your book as well.
Yeah.
So I know it's on your site. It's also on Amazon.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us, like, I can imagine where the idea for your book came about, but tell us more about why a book?
So this book, I'm like very proud of it, and it came out very recently. So I'm very excited. Thanks for letting me share a little bit about it.
Sure.
The book came from, I had a realization that a lot of the companies that were hiring me to bring me in for workshops, I would get a chance to talk to all their employees, all their teams, but there were so many smaller teams and, solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and influencers and personal brand folks who maybe wouldn't have the opportunity to be in a workshop with me or come to one of my, conference trainings. And I wanted to make sure that I had a way to make my teaching more accessible to people who are maybe on their own or part of a smaller team that doesn't have resources to like bring in a trainer for the day. So that was really the desire, is how do I take as much as I know as possible and pack it into something that doesn't cost more than $20? What's the like lowest price way I can get this out of as many people. And so that's where the book came from. You know, I had considered a course, and I may still do a course down the line. But the book just seemed like, you know, I'm a writer. My former journalist. Writing is my first content language. It's what's easiest for me to create. And so I knew that I could write the book fairly quickly, and I did. I wrote it in about 4 months while I was pregnant with my daughter before she was born. We got that written very quickly and easily because that was my area of expertise, you know, my strong suit. And I knew we could get it out to people quickly, cheaply, and hopefully it would help them, you know, in a short time span. And so that was really my goal, is just trying to make it super accessible for anyone who might need it and who could benefit from it.
I love it. And am I correct that you're offering the first chapter?
I am. Yeah. So if you guys want to check out the first chapter totally for free, check it out, see if it's right for you. Find me on Instagram. So my Instagram is Mel Deziel, and you'll see the spelling of my name here. So MELDEZIEL. Find me on Instagram, and that link in the bio will let you download the first chapter. It's the introduction and the first chapter, totally for free, so you can see if the book is a fit for you. But basically it's the content fuel framework, how to generate unlimited story ideas. And the book gives you a step-by-step system for how to generate 500 or more content ideas, guaranteed, from this book. I know that sounds like a huge promise, but like, it's a whole system, and it's very easy, and we go through it step by step. So my promise to you is that if you have the book, if you actually read through it and follow the steps, that you will find it incredibly easy to come up with literally hundreds of content ideas. And hopefully you'll never have that question of what should I post, or what should I talk about, or how can I tell my story in this way? Hopefully ever again. We'll see.
And again, for any industry, any type of business.
Oh yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And the good news is that I also tried really hard to put a ton of examples in here. So there are literally hundreds of examples in here for everything from, you know, a local chiropractor to a diamond retailer to a boutique to a fitness trainer. Like, I literally made a list of every possible like industry that I could think of, in-person businesses, digital businesses. And I tried to make sure that everything was addressed somewhere in there. So there's going to be some examples that probably won't apply to you. You know, you're not an accountant, so that example might not work for you. But, you know, you might say, well, if I could adapt that for my audience, or adapt that for my expertise. So there'll be plenty of inspiration in there, I promise.
I love it. Well, Melanie, thank you so much. Are there any last words, any takeaways you want to leave us with?
And the last thing I'll say is, you know, a lot of times when I'm doing workshops, or, you know, running a mastermind or something, I'll have someone who says that they don't think they're creative, that, you know, I'm not a content person, or I'm not a writer, or, you know, I'm not good on video, whatever it is. We all have these sort of limiting beliefs, and I'm not going to get all woo-woo and talk about limiting beliefs in the grand scheme of life, but we have limiting beliefs that hold us back from telling our story and creating content for our audience. And I really truly believe that everyone has a story to tell, that every business has interesting content they can create for their audience, and that your audience is actually waiting for those stories. They want to learn, they want to hear from you, they trust your expertise. And so if you can find a way to push whatever that feeling is aside and say, if I'm not comfortable on video, either I'm going to practice and get more comfortable on video, or I'm going to go all in on something that's not video, so that I don't deprive myself of the ability to share my story with my audience. And I don't deprive my audience of information they need that could make their lives better or easier. So find whatever it is that's keeping you from creating content, from telling that story, and find a way to work through it or work around it, and go out there and tell those stories, because your audience needs it and your business needs you to do it.
Mic drop. That is huge. That was the best. Oh, thank you so much, Melanie. I really, really do appreciate all of your time, your wisdom, what you shared here today. We actually went over our time, but I don't even care, because it was so good.
I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been really, really amazing. So you guys, you will be getting an email shortly after this interview, and it will have all of Melanie's contact information, a link to access the first chapter of her book, and also buy her book, which I cannot recommend any higher, you need this book. Trust me. I have my copy on its way. Thank you. Thank you again. And I definitely want you back on here soon because I'm already thinking of more questions, and I would love to do a deep dive into even like different business types and how
Yeah,
it could work for them. So
I love that. That's fun for me. Let's do it. Thanks for letting me share my story.
oh, you're welcome. All right, you guys, thank you for tuning in to another Passionpreneur series, and we will be back here tomorrow. Have a great day, you guys. Thank you, Melanie.
Thanks.